The system doesn't have one way to control people, it has your way, specifically yours. It's been watching long enough to know what keeps you comfortable, what makes you click, what kind of anger actually feels good to feel. It knows things about you that probably you haven't figured out about yourself yet, and it's been using them against you for years. See, here's the thing about the book that nobody genuinely talks about. There's a novel that is written before most of your parents were born, and it describes a government that goes on to control everything. Every person, every thought, every word, except 85% of the population is barely watched at all. That's actually the majority that is left completely alone. Not because the system actually trusts them, because it found something more efficient than watching. See, one line in this book actually goes on to explain the whole thing. The majority could only become dangerous if they actually become conscious. So the system doesn't threaten them, it entertains them. Gambling, cheap beer, football scores, content, just enough of it always. Not as a reward, as a strategy. Because here's the truth, ladies and gentlemen, you don't need to control people who are busy being distracted. You don't need to monitor people who are numbing themselves. They aren't imprisoned, they are just occupied. And the one person in this story who actually sees what's happening, he looks at this massive majority and thinks, if they ever woke up, if they ever actually understand what was going around them, the whole thing would collapse within weeks. But the unfortunate truth is that they don't wake up, because waking up actually requires a certain kind of discomfort, and the system is actually absolutely excellent at removing that discomfort before it goes on to become a thought. We're all pros, not the ones that are being monitored through fear, the ones handed exactly enough to make the questions feel less urgent, the ones who don't need to be watched because we're already doing it ourselves. Think about what you watched last night, right? Not what you chose to watch, what you ended up watching. There's a big difference, and the system actually knows which one it was. But comfort isn't just enough, it's not alone, right? Because even distracted people go on to build pressure, stress, frustration, a vague feeling that something is wrong, but you can't quite name it. The pressure needs to go somewhere, there has to be vented. The book describes something called the 2 minute hit, and it's absolutely interesting, right? So every day at the same time, people gather and watch a screen, and on that screen, an enemy, a face, a name, a threat, and they scream. 2 minutes of pure collective rage directed to the face, and then it's over. The pressure releases. They go back to their lives. The target rotates. Today it's this person, last year it was that country, next month it is something else entirely. The specific target doesn't matter. What matters is that the anger has somewhere to go, and that somewhere is always from the system itself. Think about the last time you opened your phone and there was nothing to be angry about. Really, think. I can't remember either. There is always something, always a person, always a story, and the outrage is actually absolutely real. I want to be clear about that. The feeling is completely genuine, but the target was simplified, it was amplified, it was placed in front of you by a system that learned that outrage keeps people watching longer than almost any other emotion. The 2 minutes hate is now 30 minutes long, personalized, and you schedule it yourself. And when it's over, when you have commented and argued and shared, the pressure releases. You feel heard, you feel close to the app, the system stays exactly as it was. The next part is actually the hardest for me to narrate, right? Because if it's working on you, you won't even know. So the book here actually goes on to describe something called as a reflex that is so trained, so automatic that the thought stops itself before it fully forms. Not self censorship. See, self censorship is when you have a thought and you actually decide not to say it. This is earlier than that. The person doesn't decide anything, the thought just doesn't arrive. It feels like the question simply never occurred to them, like they just didn't find it interesting. The absence actually feels absolutely natural. Imagine, right? Just imagine you're given a map, you use it every day, you trust it completely. But some countries are not even on the map, they're not hidden, they're just never drawn. You don't look for what isn't on a map. You don't even know how to look, let's be very, very honest. You just navigate with what you have and you go on to call it the whole world. Here's something that is absolutely worth trying. Think about a topic you have strong opinions about. Let's say politics, right? And how the world works, why things are the way they are. Now, go on to ask yourself one single questions. Where did those opinions actually go on to start? Not who told you, not what you read. Why did you encounter that information and not something else? Who decided what was the starting point? Most people try to get to that question and then something happens. The mind just moves on. Not because the question isn't important or isn't framed right or they're not able to build a relationship with their mind to actually go on to answer that question. Right now, watching this, there's a probability that that thought almost formed and it dissolved instantly before you actually noticed it was in your head. You don't know what it was. That's the point. It's not reading your mind, it doesn't have to. It just notices where your thumb slows down, what you rewatch, what you forward, what makes you pause at 2 a.m. in the morning. It builds a picture of you which is more detailed than the one that you have about yourself, and then it figures out one thing: what keeps you there. Not what's true, not what's good for you, what keeps you there. Outrage works, fear works, the feeling that you finally figure out something, that works especially well. This isn't any kind of conspiracy that I'm trying to explain, or this isn't the thesis that I'm claiming that I have broken down with the algorithm. I'm just trying to say that this whole thing that we're a victim to is actually engineering, and engineering doesn't need an enemy. Near the end of the book, the villain sits down with the main character and explains everything. Honestly, with no misdirection, no propaganda, just the truth. He says something that is very, very interesting. He says the system doesn't want to make people happy, doesn't want prosperity or stability or even a better world. It wants one thing: power. Not as a means to something better, power, because power is powerful. That's the whole answer. And then he says, if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The most interesting part is that he's not angry when he says that. He's calm and he sounds like it's almost educational. Powered is an honest word. The modern version doesn't actually use it. The modern version says engagement, time on platform, retention rate, just cleaner words, right? Tailored to just divert from the actual agenda. Same thing actually lies underneath. The platform ran studies on their own users. Studies went on to show that uh, people who actually use these apps and these algorithms too much feel worse. They filed the studies away. They kept building because not because they're just evil or they want to go against the humanity or the human race, because the thing that they're optimizing for isn't your happiness, it's just your attention that you lend to them at free of cost at any given point of time. And attention and happiness are not the same thing, they are frequently just opposites. The boot isn't a boot, it's actually a screen, and it doesn't stamp, it just glows quietly in the dark. There's one last thing, and almost nobody knows about it or actually talks about it. At the very end of the book, and the story is over, when the story is actually ending, there's actually an appendix, right? A short, dry academic essay about the language the system actually invented. Most people go on to skip it, right? But the people who actually read it notice something strange. It is actually written in past tense, right? News speak was the official language of Oceania, not is, was. Think about what that meant, right? Or what this actually means. The entire story takes place inside this sealed world. There's no escape, no rebellions that actually go on to win, no hero who actually makes it out. But whoever wrote the appendix is writing from after, from a future where the whole thing is already felt, and somebody actually survived, somebody who understood the system clearly enough to sit down calmly, academically, and write about what it actually was. Orwell hit the hope at the back of the book in a tense of a single verb where almost nobody looks at and talks about. The person, the one who actually wrote the appendix, is the most hopeful character in the story. Orwell never names them, never shows them, just leaves their handwriting at the back. Understanding the system is how it ends. Not fighting it, not escaping it, seeing it clearly without flinching and showing someone else. That's what the appendix is. That's always what the appendix has been. Right now, somewhere in the world, there's a person who sees things completely different from you. Not stupider, not brainwashed, just filtered differently. The algorithm built a different room, different walls, no windows to yours, and they're just as certain as you are. The question isn't are they wrong, are they right, do they have the right thoughts? The question is, how would you know if you were them? You wouldn't, because filter doesn't feel like filter, it actually goes on to feel like clarity. Anybody who has that filter actually describes themselves as somebody who's got a lot of confidence and somebody who's got a lot of clarity and perspective on certain things, while in reality that is not the case. The thing doesn't need your fear, it doesn't need your obedience, it just needs one thing, right? Your attention, and you just gave it, right? And as I speak about 9 minutes ago, and you'll probably open something else the moment this video actually ends. And the strangest part, if someone tried to take it away from you, you'd probably defend it. The question isn't whether you've been filtered, the question is what you do with the part of you that just noticed this thesis. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I will see you in the next video.